This is American Romanticism, Part 1. American Romanticism took place from 1800 to 1860. Well, what does romantic mean exactly? Maybe you remember from your freshman year when you talked about it, about medieval romance. Well, hopefully you know that romantic does not mean what we've come to think of it as being, which is love stories. Romantic means it's viewing life as we would like it to be rather than how it really is. The Romantic movement actually started in Europe in the 1700s, and eventually it made its way to America. American writers were mostly influenced by the British poets of England, like Lord Byron and William Wordsworth. Romanticism is actually a reaction against rationalism, which is what we studied in our last unit with the Revolutionary period. The rationalistic view of urban life was replaced by the romantic view. The rationalists saw cities as a place to find success. Remember that Benjamin Franklin went to Philadelphia, like in this picture, and eventually to New York. He saw it as a place of opportunity, a place to be successful. Well, the Revolutionary War and the Industrial Revolution changed things and turned cities into dirty, crowded, crime-infested places with wretched working conditions, and the Romantics began to see the city as a place of moral corruption, poverty, and death. So, they escaped to nature, as far from the city as possible. Nature was seen as a place to connect with your spirituality or with God. Romantics also saw poetry as the highest work of the imagination, a vehicle for truth. However, science, which the rationalists very highly valued, was seen as the destroyer of truth. Edgar Allan Poe, called science a vulture with wings of dull realities that preyed on the hearts of poets. Let's talk now about the characteristics of American Romanticism that we'll be looking for as we read through the literature. The first one is intuition. They valued intuition rather than reason. Remember last time with the rationalists, they valued reason, being able to logically think things through. This time, the romantics are more about intuition, which is that gut feeling that you just know something is true. You don't have to think it through logically. You just have this feeling that you know it's true. They also valued imagination. They saw beauty and truth in the supernatural and imaginative realms. We're going to read a lot more stories this time about using the imagination. As I said before, they shunned civilization. They sought out nature. They could reflect on nature as to gain spiritual wisdom. They also believed in fighting for the individual's freedom and worth. They also trusted the past rather than progress. Progress was not so good. Past, what we know from the past is good. They were also inspired by myths, legends, and folklore. So let's compare now Romanticism and rationalism. The Romantics valued intuition and imagination, where the rationalists that we studied last time were about reason and logic. The Romantics valued nature, whereas the rationalists valued civilization. The Romantics saw nature as a spiritual experience, whereas the rationalists saw nature as science and as evidence of a supernatural creator, of God. The Romantics value individual freedoms, whereas the rationalists were more about social or common freedoms as they fought for us to become our own country. The Romantics valued youthful innocence versus educated sophistication, like Ben Franklin from the rationalists. Romantics wrote poetry and stories, where rationalists wrote political propaganda. They had an agenda for their writing, trying to get our government free. Let's talk a little bit about American Romantic poetry. While there was a big push to make American literature more American and less European, most of the poets of this era stuck with styles much like those of England in themes, meter, and imagery. They didn't want the world thinking we were a bunch of ignorant American hicks over here. They did, however, use American subjects and settings. Now, poetry was very popular at this time because they didn't have radio or TV, so often poems were read aloud by the fireside as family entertainment. Certain poets came to be known as the fireside poets. In their time, and even since then, they are some of the most popular poets America has ever produced. People like Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, John Greenleaf Whittier, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and James Russell Lowell. However, there were some poets of this time that broke from the traditional poetry models, like William Cullen Bryant. He's considered the father of American poetry because he started a true American poetry. What we'll read by him was actually written when he was 17. This is obviously a picture of him as an older man, but this is how he is most commonly known. Next class, we're going to read his poem and one from a fireside poet looking for evidence of the characteristics of Romanticism, so make sure that you know what those are.